Welcome. I'm Keith Fillauer, Chairman of the Oak Ridge Board of Education, and this is Focus on Education. Beginning tonight and for the remainder of the school year, each month, a member of the Board of Education will be hosting this show with their guest or guest, and hopefully bringing you information of interest about Oak Ridge education and the community of Oak Ridge in which we live. So with that being said, there's no better person to talk about the community of Oak Ridge than my guest tonight, the Mayor of the City of Oak Ridge, Fillauer-Gooch. Mayor, it's a pleasure again to have you here, and thank you for being here.
Well, Keith, it's always great to be with you. It's always great to be at Oak Ridge High School for any event. I appreciate you doing this program, and I appreciate all the hard work that the high school is doing in terms of the media class, and so a lot of things to talk about and a short time to do it. So I'd say we need to get on with it.
Absolutely, I agree. We'll do that. Hopefully we'll talk about some things tonight that those watching, and this show will be replayed a number of times throughout the month until the next one is taped, so ample opportunity for folks to see this. So we'll talk about some things reflecting how the community of Oak Ridge and the Board of Education and City Council and so forth, how we cooperate to work together to enhance education and life in our city. And I think the first question that's probably the most important question is the relationship. People are always asking, well, how do the Board of Education and City Council get along together? And I'm going to preface that before I let you answer by saying a week doesn't go by that you and I don't talk a couple of times.
That's correct.
A week doesn't generally go by where the city manager, Dr. Mark Watson, and superintendent of schools, Dr. Bruce Borcher, they don't meet to talk about related things. So how do you see, and I appreciate that, let me say right off the bat, that relationship is great. It's not necessarily you calling me or me calling you. It's whatever we need to talk about, the other one calls the other one.
That's correct.
And that means a lot to me, and I think it means a lot to the operation of what we do. So how do you see that?
Well, I think it's critically important to the citizens of Oak Ridge. They really expect it, and they most certainly deserve the cooperation of both levels of government. And you know, and it's important because the city of Oak Ridge has had a commitment to excellence in education for as long as there's been a city school system, and to provide the best education that we can to all of our students, to all of our children, regardless of their station in life. So if we're going to do that, it certainly takes the cooperation and the work together of the Board of Education and the City Council and the staffs of both organizations. School systems, big business.
It is in fact a big business. We're going to talk about some of the things that we are working on as we coordinate things together, things that we're currently doing and things that are out there in the future that would possibly be projects that we'd be working on together. And I think it's safe to say that if you have an excellent education system, the help with having that excellent education system comes from the support of the city. Having an excellent education system then turns around and helps the city thrive because people want to come live here.
That's correct.
Because of that educational system, and businesses hopefully are looking to establish a presence in the community because of that educational system. One of the things that we have talked about in the past and will continue to talk about, probably for another show, but the need for the workforce in our community, and is Oak Ridge graduating those that can go to that workforce in Oak Ridge?
Yeah, that's a bigger question and it would take more time than we'd have tonight, but certainly that is a key factor going forward. We've always been focused on that. At least we'll be entering my 8th year as mayor very soon, and we have always talked about that in terms of the ability of our students, workforce training, where they're going to be, what position they're going to be when they leave our school system and go to the next step. And that is critically important, not only for them, but for the vitality of the city as we go forward, as we try to attract new people to come in. New people, certainly new families are the lifeblood of any community, and certainly the excellence of the school system in Oak Ridge is a drawing card for us when we are trying to attract new investment in town, new businesses. And the quality of the education that we provide stands on its own, and we can compete, I believe, with certainly any public school system in the state and most private schools. And I'm very proud of that, but it goes back for 70 years, at least 70 years, to a commitment of excellence by generation after generation after generation of Oak Ridgers.
Absolutely. We have found, I would think, you would agree, that we are better collectively working on things than we are separate working on things. And I think that is shown in some of the projects that we've done or are currently working on. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, and before we do that, let's talk about the fact that not only do you and I meet or talk, and Dr. Borchers and Dr. Watson meet or talk, the four of us get together at times
Absolutely.
too.
Yeah.
And then also the school board and the city council try to come together twice a year in joint meetings to talk about what we're trying to accomplish, where our plans are, where we're headed, into the next year. And that's not always been the case. And certainly I hope that we're setting the example that will be carried forward in the future. So as it relates to the projects that we worked on, I think the first one that comes to mind, obviously, is the new pre-K and relocating it when we were given a directive by our friends in Anderson County government that we needed to find a new place for our Head Start students and our pre-K students to attend class because of inadequacies in the building, the administration building. And as you'll recall, we put together, that was one of those joint meetings
right.
between council and the Board of Education. We put together a committee with representatives from both the elected officials,
right.
The staff, and we were able to get Dr. Shirley Raines, who had just recently retired as president of the University of Memphis, to chair that committee. And as many people know, but they should know, if they don't, Dr. Raines is, as far as we know, the only pre-K teacher that had ever risen through the ranks to become a university president. So, but the pre-K is such an outstanding facility. The facilities itself, the only thing more outstanding than the facilities, and of course the children that go there, are the staff
right, absolutely.
that are there and their commitment to those children. And it is in Scarborough community, and we looked at many different sites, came together both collectively, the board and the city council, with the residents of Scarborough and met their needs in terms of enhancements to the Scarborough Park, roads, streets, that were all part and parcel really of doing a major project like this. And I think it is one of the crown jewels of any pre-K facility in the state of Tennessee.
And I would agree, and I've had several phone calls from some colleagues on other boards across the state that want to come and tour as they're thinking about what their pre-K facilities are looking like and their needs are. So we'll bring some people from across the state in and brag a little bit more on that when we do. Not as perhaps obvious to folks, but one of the things we've done collectively is work on a schedule for roof repair.
That is correct.
If our buildings are going to stay what we want them to be,
spending millions of dollars on roof repairs.
And we've done that collectively to set up a schedule so we don't wait for an emergency to tell us that we better get a new roof on. It's time to do that. We'll probably be asked about a new school administration building. We know the school administration building is still in its location there on New York Avenue, and their discussions are still ongoing to take a look at.
And there are multiple options to do that. Certainly from a capital standpoint, what you mentioned though in terms of the roofs on the schools, and unfortunately a lot of things become obsolete at the same time, and we had that experience with roofs. The other thing that I'm really proud of is we worked together to get air filtration systems up in all the schools as we were trying to work our way through the COVID pandemic to do what we could to protect our students, while at the same time encouraging teachers, staff to become vaccinated, for the children and the staff, to wear masks, to support each other, both organizations, the city and the school system, in terms of trying to protect our assets, our folks, and provide a good example. So those are just things we've done here in the last, year and a half.
And along with that, we are becoming more consistent with looking at energy savings within our building. If you drive by Robertsville, you'll note that ongoing work there as well. Again, for another show perhaps, we'll talk about it a little bit in a few minutes, as Oak Ridge does continue to show growth. The day may come where we'll be having the conversation about another school,
or what we
would do at that point in time. So that's out there on our agenda as well.
We worked together on along with the Blankenship Field Foundation.
Right, I'm glad you mentioned that.
But the improvements to Blankenship Field, we're working together on certainly the improvements and renovations to our track, which was long suffering and needed attention. And so we're trying to do things across the board in different areas of the education system as our resources allow us to do it, and with the generous support of the public, because it takes all of us doing that.
Absolutely. Somebody did ask me the other day about the new track facility and asked maybe that at the ribbon cutting, maybe you and I could run a 100-yard dash. I asked him how many days we would have to do that.
Well, let's see, as long as we cut that ribbon at midnight, that'd be okay.
All right. We're going to take a short break, and we will be right back with Focus on Education. Welcome back to Focus on Education. My guest tonight is Mayor Warren Gooch, and we've been talking in the first half of the show about things that are going on collectively within the educational system and the Oak Ridge community. And now we're going to get down to the hard part. And when we talk about all of these projects and things, from roofs to buildings, you have to have the ability to pay for them as well. So, Mayor, let's jump right in.
Sure.
And talk about, people may wonder, I think some people think schools are funded 100% by the city.
Correct.
That's not true.
No.
But a major portion of the funding comes from the city. You want to talk about that funding
So
stream a
we've
little
got
bit?
three funding streams. You have local government, which would be the city and the county, Anderson County, and some from Rome County. The state government through the BEP program, and to a much lesser extent, the federal government. So with regard to local contributions, that's over 60% of the total school funding. There are two sources for the city's contribution or financing the schools, and that's through property tax and sales tax, and taxed at different levels, but certainly as it relates to the last figures I saw in terms of property tax on buildings, homes, etc., about a third of the dollars raised through property tax are contributed to the schools. Now, as it relates to the sales tax, we have a half or a quarter of a percent of the sales tax that goes toward the paying off of the school building, the Oak Ridge High School. One thing I'm very proud about, we've worked very hard over the last 8 years, city government, to refinance the bonds that paid for the building of the high school, and have taken those down. I don't know if we paid them down, but we've refinanced them to much more competitive rates. We're almost out of all the variable bonds, so that we're back to fixed rates, and that helps bring stability in terms of the debt service, because we have other obviously very important functions in the city besides funding schools and police and fire and public service and taking care of the roads, taking care of sewer and water, and so all of those things work together. But those are the main sources of funding, and the reason that it's so important to have economic growth is that you avoid having to raise taxes. Obviously, we can't raise property tax. We can raise property tax. We can't raise sales tax. We can raise property tax. But again, we try to grow the tax base with new investment as opposed to growing tax revenue by raising taxes. And we've been pretty successful in that over the last 3 or 4 years. We have done a couple of small tax increases, again, to help fund we talked about the roofs, talk about the preschool, but we're doing pretty good in terms of using the resources that we have and generating new tax revenue. Main Street has been very, very important to us in the last 2 years in terms of increase in sales tax, and certainly new homes, new commercial buildings, and other investments in Oak Ridge, again, have helped build and spread that property tax base, which is absolutely essential to support our school system. People need to understand, and Oak Ridgers are very proud of this school system, and we fund it at a level that is much higher per pupil than any of the other school systems in East Tennessee, and probably more so than maybe 1 or 2 systems, in the entire state. And we're very proud of that. But again, we have to be able to pay for ongoing educational activities and services. At the same time, we're paying off debt on the high school and other obligations.
I think I've been in Oak Ridge since 1968, and if you were to drive east to west or west to east and kind of circle around in between, the growth, both residential and commercial, that we're seeing now is the most I've seen since I've been here in Oak Ridge.
Well, and due to the last, as a result of what we got in from the last census, we've now gone above the 30,000 number in terms of residents. We're somewhere around 31,500, and that number is growing. And obviously, you could talk about the number of new students in the school system, which is obviously a byproduct of people moving in to the area. And again, we were all very concerned about stagnant growth for many years in the city of Oak Ridge. We were right at or below 30,000 people, and it made it very difficult with an aging population to, again, keep up in terms of tax revenue and those activities that generate that. So, because you just can't raise taxes to fund everything. And I never will forget at one of the first Budget and Finance Committee meetings, I appointed a new Budget and Finance Committee when I was elected mayor, and the first meeting we went into, they told us, well, we're going to be getting our 5-year appraisal on the value of property, both residential, commercial, in Oak Ridge in about 2 months. Well, when we got that 5-year appraisal, first time in history that overall property values in Oak Ridge had gone down. That was a shock. So it wasn't that, the pie was not expanding, it was contracting. And so we rolled up our sleeves, went to work in terms of being sure that we got the Main Street development going, and that was part and parcel of also being able to attract additional commercial investment across the city. Obviously, the uranium processing facility that the Department of Energy is building has been a great benefit to the city in terms of tax revenue and as well as national security. So again, all of that works together. It's very complicated in terms of the funding stream and how students are funded, and that's why we got to pay attention going forward as the state determines how and when it's going to change the funding formula called the BEP, which controls the amount of tax dollars that come into public education, and for us specifically to the Oak Ridge school system.
And that's a good lead in to talk about that for just a minute or so. That topic probably will be a great topic for one show on down the path as we get to find out a little bit more about it. Again, as you said, the governor and the commissioner of education have appointed a task force to take a look at the BEP, the funding source from the state, to see upgrades, changes, etc. At this point in time, it's really still a mystery of where this is going to go, but it is critical that as mayor of the city and city council and as chairman of the board and the Board of Education and surrounding others within the administration, superintendent, city manager, finance people, etc., we've got to stay on top of this.
We've got to stay on top of it, and we've got to make the public aware of what's going on, because it is very difficult to follow. And certainly we'll be making statements about it, holding meetings in terms of public engagement related to this, because it's critical. It is absolutely critical. And I keep using the word critical.
Well, because it is.
Because it is. And particularly with our commitment, the city's commitment to education and what we think it does in terms of the quality of life for our students and the vitality and the long-term success of our city.
I was on a webinar a few days ago that board members from across the state could be on, discussing this topic, which again is in its infancy, and as it grows, as you said, we have to stay aware, we have to make the community aware, because what happens could have a major impact on our community, as it could on any other community,
Correct.
but particularly here. And a number of the questions that were asked on this webinar, the answer was, well, we'll have to wait and see. We don't know, and we don't know, but we can't wait and see when a decision is made. We want to be part of that decision-making process with our voices being heard.
We have to be very active in engaging our state representatives and state senators and the governor, for that matter, in terms of what we think is fair, equitable, and in the best interest of the students and the citizens of Oak Ridge.
Absolutely. We've got just a few minutes left. Mayor, anything else that you would like to speak on or talk about or share with the community?
I just, again, I really appreciate everyone's efforts, and I know it's been difficult time getting through COVID, and I would just continue to ask people to comply with CDC guidelines, to get vaccinated or consider getting vaccinated if you haven't. Obviously, get flu shots. I want to thank the students in the schools because I think they have been very diligent about wearing masks, and it makes a difference because you can talk about the rates of infection that we have had and how they've gone down, both in terms of students and staff. Now we're getting ready to go through the holiday season. People are going to be traveling. We did pretty well in October, during fall break, and
Right.
we've not had an outbreak or an increase, so to speak, in COVID coming back. But I mean, I try to set an example, a good example. I've fully vaccinated, had my booster. Judy has also. We wear a mask in most places, and the only reason we're not doing it on this show is because we are socially distanced. We're both vaccinated. But again, I just want to ask people to do as much as you can to help us get through this season of illness that'll be coming. The normal flu season will be back. Hopefully, we won't see an increase in COVID, but I want to thank everybody for their hard work and diligence in helping us get through this.
And I appreciate that, and it has been hard work. I haven't seen the most recent numbers, but the numbers from the end of last week, we had a total of 5 students that were out COVID related, and 0 staff members. So that just didn't happen because it happened. Right. It happened because people were doing the right things, and I want to echo your statements as well. With the holidays coming up, it's critical that people make good judgments. They think, because we could come back after the first of the year and be turned upside down if we're not careful. We're making great progress, and we want that progress to continue, because if we don't, the things that we're doing, have a short-term memory and think about educationally what we weren't able to do.
Correct.
And now we're working back where we can do it,
right.
And we don't want to lose that. We want to stay there.
And I'd be remiss, if I didn't express thanks to my other members on City Council, for their support of our school system, and all the citizens, and because you support it not only with your tax dollars, but in your contribution of time and your other money related to many school activities, and the pride that you show in our school system, and your support of it is very heartwarming, and it makes a difference in the vitality and the success of our city and the lives of our students. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you.
And that's a good place to end. You've been watching Focus on Education. I'm Keith Fillauer, Chairman of the Board of Education. My guest has been Mayor Warren Gooch. And again, next month in December, another member of our Board of Education will be hosting with a guest. We hope you will tune in. Thank you for your time and thank you for watching.
Good night.